about how to do it. But basically, ideally, you stay muted until I call on you. So raise your hand, and then I will unmute you or ask you to unmute yourself. And then I'll lower your hand and make a question, ask comment. Feel free to use the chat also. But as much as possible, if you're comfortable, please talk on your video, and we will have a little bit of a community here. But to begin things tonight, we have Elaine Hopkins, who is from the Friends of the St. Paul Library. And the Friends has been a long-standing sponsor of Books and Bars ever since we started doing events at Amsterdam in downtown St. Paul. And Elaine has a really cool thing that she wants to tell you about tonight. Elaine, are you ready to take it away?
I totally am. Thank you so much, Jeff, and welcome everyone. Like Jeff said, we've been really pleased to sponsor Books and Bars for many years now, and it's been a couple of months since we've been able to have a Friends representative at the event. So I'm glad to be here with you tonight, and would like to share an opportunity with you. So we are the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library. We do programming at the St. Paul Public Libraries locally, and then we also serve as the Minnesota Center for the Book, so conduct statewide programming as an affiliate of the Library of Congress. And one of our biggest programs that we do is the Minnesota Book Awards. And so, believe it or not, the season is now gearing up. We are in our 34th year of the Minnesota Book Awards, and we have a call out for people to be judges. So I'm putting in the chat a link, I will do this right now, to find out more about being a judge for the Minnesota Book Awards. We have applications open until September 10th, so please do take a look at our materials and this season and see if you feel like you might want to apply to be a judge. We have a broad representation of people from various backgrounds all across the state. Please forgive the airplanes. And it's really, Jeff can attest to it. It is really a fun experience. We have 2 rounds of judging. The first takes place at the end of September to choose the finalists in 9 book categories. And then the second round of judging takes place at the beginning of March, or sort of the second week of March, to choose the winner. And then that is announced at our awards ceremony in April. There is a stipend for our judges. We've been able to do that the last couple of years, thanks to some state funding. And you can find out more if you follow that link. So I would encourage you to do so. And Jeff can chime in. I think we've got your application for this year too, don't we, Jeff?
Yes, I agree with Elaine. It's actually a lot of fun. For many years, for whatever reason, I didn't sign up and do the judging part. I had been involved in other ways with the Book Awards and always loved the program. But last year was my first time judging. I really enjoyed it, had a great time doing it, and I already signed up and applied for this year. Fingers crossed I get in again. I switched categories. I tried something different. I judged the genre fiction category last year, and so I picked a different one this year just to see, how a different category rolls. But it was really fun, and every book I read, it was good. It was a tough decision, but it was really fun to then have like a mini book club where you then talk about it with other people who have read the book and kind of decide, well, which one met the criteria and are we going to honor at the awards? But you know what? All the nominees are winners. Am I right, Elaine? Just to be nominated for a book award is
I mean, if you are able to get your book published and out there, you are indeed a winner. Yes. So yes, no, we're privileged to be able to honor the tremendous writers that we have in our state. So please take a look at the program and check it out. Again, as Jeff said, we have categories, there's something for everyone, from children's picture books to genre fiction, novel, poetry, history, nonfiction, general. So please do check it out. And again, thank you for being a part of Books and Bars.
Thank you, Elaine, and thank you to the Friends. So highly recommend it. Please, you guys sign up. You'll have a good time. It's totally worth it. Okay, so I saw in the chat briefly that there's a Lisa here who's here for the first time. Lisa, I put some instructions for you about how to Books and Bars video chat. Hopefully you saw those, but it's like I said, raise your hand. I'll call on you, ask you to unmute yourself. You can use the chat. If you have any tech issues, you can always leave and come back in, hopefully, And yeah, so it should be good to go. I see we have some trusty regulars who are all going to be very friendly and helpful also. So thanks, guys. I'd like to start with a little bit about the author. Tonight's author is Raven Leilani. The book is Luster. Did you all read it? If there's someone who hasn't read it, that's totally fine too, because I have a new category, which I started at our last in-person event called Too Long Didn't Read, or TL:DR. And it's where you basically look at the cover of the book and maybe read the first sentence, or someone reads the first sentence, and then you tell us what you think the book is about. Is there by any chance anyone who hasn't read the book here tonight? Anyone? Raise your hand if you have not read the book. It's okay. All right, everyone's read it tonight. That's fine. Maybe tomorrow at our in-person event, someone will get to play TLDR. Okay, so about the author, I have it here in front of me. So she is about to turn 31 at the end of August. She was raised in the Bronx in Albany. She got a master's from New York University and actually wrote this book, Luster, her first book, in her second year there. It took her about a year of actual writing while she was also going to school and working a job. But you know, your first book, as she has said, you know, it's kind of takes your whole life up to that first book. And so she has an interesting essay that maybe you have read, where she talks about her Seventh-day Adventist faith that she was raised with, but then gave up for a Comic-Con. When Comic-Con, hence why I'm wearing the Spider-Man shirt, is a prominent part of this book when we get to towards the end. And I recommend, I'll find the essay and send it if you haven't seen it, but her essay about it basically is how, you know, she kind of chose fandom for some reasons and what fandom means to her over the faith that she was raised in. And in this book, the way it relates to it is how Akilah needed that fandom to get a sense of community and to feel joy and to feel love that she wasn't getting elsewhere. So that's a bit about our author. Did anyone recently finish the book, maybe today or in the last day or so, and wants to start us off with what they thought of it? You can always start by saying what you would rate the book or something you liked about it, didn't like about it. Anyone have a hand and want to kick us off tonight? Lisa, I see you. Talk to us, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, I am in another book club, and I had finished that book about a week ago, and I saw that I would have time to read this book before tonight's meeting, so I finished it around 2 p.m. I enjoyed it. I liked the writing style more than I liked the story itself. Some of the sex stuff just put me off. But I really like her poetic use of words and her sentence construction, and the vivid way she describes things. So that's my comment.
Thanks, Lisa. I like when you mentioned her style. And I'm wondering what others thought about the idea of the lack of quotation marks and lack of capitalization, and maybe why she did it that way, and if that affected anyone's reading at all. Any thoughts on that, Lisa, or anyone?
Well, she did use italics instead of quotation marks.
Yep.
So you knew when she was quoting someone else by the italics.
Okay. My initial take on it was it felt like intentionally more informal, as though it were like social media, or, you know, maybe a text or a tweet, and it was something like, you know, just it, I don't know, more stream of consciousness in a way, and almost like, but at times it may have been, you know, if you weren't doing the audio, I don't know if anyone was confused as to, did somebody say that? Did she think that? Or if the italics were enough at that point. Or anyone else on the writing style, any thoughts on that? I see Donna has her hand up. Hi, Donna.
Yes, all right. I'll just say that I came tonight because I'm curious what Rebecca and Kara had to say about this book, because I was really kind of struck by, yes, the writing style, and also all of the whole myriad of issues that I think are addressed in this book that have to do with this couple that are different by age, different by race, different by gender, different by economic situation, and so on. So I think she pretty cleverly sets up this really intriguing, not totally healthy or satisfying relationship between these two characters. But the writing style was really amazing to me. I mean, I read this book off and on while I was watching the Olympics. And during some of those Olympics events, like particularly gymnastics, where there will be a lull, like in the floor exercise, a lull, and then there's just piling of a whole sequence of amazing, over the top actions. And I was reading it, I thought, that's kind of what her style was like. You'd have a little bit of plot, and then there would be these long paragraphs of sentences. A single sentence would go on for line after line after line, piling in the details, amazing choice of details to include, and in the end, very thoughtfully constructed. And I went with it and was kind of blown away in parts by it. But ultimately, I thought there were a few times when I just felt it was a little bit like showing off, or a little bit over the top, or a little bit like, let's see how far I can go with this. And then boom, nail the ending. And so I was very impressed by it, but it was a very unusual writing style, I think, to convey a story that had a whole lot more going on in the story than the writing style necessarily was for. But I just am so curious what other people thought of it, because there's just a whole lot to talk about in this book.
All right, Donna, I like that you said other people at the end, because up top you clearly made it sound like the only reason you come to the online version is to hear what Rebecca and Kara thought of it, which is great, because Rebecca and Kara are here and they have not been coming in real life at Local Roots lately. So, but Donna, I have seen you there. So I like, and I hope that Donna continues to come in real life, but she likes it so much that she knows the only way to get, as Rebecca calls herself, a dusty regular, is to come to the online version right now. I said trusty regular, but if you heard dusty regular, I apologize. I did not say dusty regular. And I will now call out two trusty regulars who were called out by Donna. Rebecca or Kara, would you like to speak? Because Donna wants to know what you thought of it. That's why she's here tonight. If you're not ready, when you're ready, just know that Donna is with us tonight. And if you could just dust yourself off, and then I can trust you to say something. Are you in? Are you in or not? If not, we'll come back to you later. Oh, Kara's got her hand up. I'm going with Kara. She's ready. Talk to us, Kara.
Hey, I'm talking to you guys from my car. I'm driving on a little road trip back from Duluth.
Dedication. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm not having my camera on and I'm not looking at anybody, but I can hear you. Donna, I appreciate the call out. I really enjoyed this book. I thought the writing style was like so excellent. I think like it took me a few pages to kind of get used to the way she did dialogue, but by the end it felt very seamless to me. And I'm not often a person who is into like stylistic books. Like I like good characters and I like a good plot, but I really did love her prose. And it has been like a month since I've read it, so I am not gonna have the names of the people right, but I really loved the protagonist. Like I had such affection for her, and it was really
Edie.
Edie, yes.
Edie,
I
Eric.
loved,
Edie,
like,
Eric, Rebecca, and Akila. Those are the four names we need to know tonight.
Okay, that's great. I was hoping I would pick it up from people who would remember better than me. I really liked Edie and I was so compelled by her and I wanted things to go well for her, but she also gave me like such tremendous anxiety because like she really likes to dive into making poor decisions, and she like knows they're not good. She like kind of knows that she likes toxic people. And she just goes into it anyway. So I don't know. She was a super compelling protagonist. I really liked her, even though she made me feel like I could just feel my like concern and like had like secondhand embarrassment sometimes, like in the pit of my stomach. I thought her relationship with the whole family was really interesting. I did think that her relationship with Eric was the least interesting. And of course, like, I think Eric is a terrible person and like kind of a loser. But I really liked Akilah and Rebecca and like the way both of them related to Edie and how she related to them, like not in a super healthy way all the time, but I don't know, I thought it was interesting. And I thought Rebecca was a really compelling character. I feel like we've read similar books about these white families and these young Black women, and the wife is always like super toxic. And Rebecca is toxic, but Rebecca was like very fascinating to me. So I'm excited to hear other people's opinions, but I like gave it 5 stars.
Awesome. Kara, I'm so happy that every once in a while I pick one that you like. And I knew, and I can kind of tell, I'm getting pretty good at like, Kara's going to hate this, Kara's going to like this one. I had a feeling you'd like this one. And I was pretty sure some of the other ones that you would not like. And I figure every once in a while, if she likes one, she'll still drive back from Duluth and make time for us, even if, you know what I mean? Like, even if she had to read a few she didn't like. So thank you for being gutsy, nutsy, trusty, and dusty. Those are the 4 I've seen so far in the chat. They all apply to all the regulars. Speaking of, we have the nutsy Rebecca Moss who's been waiting to talk. Rebecca, talk to us.
Thanks for the shout out, Donna. I hadn't realized that I have aligned myself so tightly with Kara, but you know what? I can't think of a better position to be in. So that's good. My first reaction to this book was not another book with Rebecca in it. I feel like I've been bombarded with the name Rebecca, and there is that dissociative thing that happens, or what me, I just also binge watched, what's it called? The soccer guy who goes to England, and anyway,
Ted
Rebecca is
Lasso.
one of the main, Ted Lasso. Rebecca's also in that. And also a very kind of interesting, difficult to like white woman who is very, very flawed. But as in this book, I think the truest relationship in many ways was with Rebecca, because they were both damaged. They had a relationship with Eric that was not healthy. They both cared intensely about Akilah.
Yep.
They both were mothering her in their own ways, and they cooperated. They, did that cooperatively, and I thought that was lovely. And I do think that she was destructive, very self-destructive, and it's very hard to read a character that you care about. That, and I'm not talking about Rebecca now. That makes very poor choices. And the sex, yes. I mean, it's embarrassing to hear about really bad sex. I mean, it just really is. So no one needs to have more of that in their head. But my biggest problem was I listened to it in an audiobook, and I did it again where the audiobook was, the voice sounded, and I don't know how any other way to say this, but the woman sounded so white, and it was very hard to not have this very kind of shifting viewpoint of the words that were coming, out of her mouth and the voice that she was using it with. And I know that's a prejudice that people would, but it was something that I couldn't shake. So I'm being honest with you all about that. And I have no idea who the actual person who read it was, but so it felt like Rebecca was narrating it in some ways in my head. And that was something I couldn't get away from, that there was still a filter. I really wasn't listening to the author inner. So some books I think I just should read rather than listen to, especially when there's a challenging character like this. So I really liked the book, and in the end, it was difficult. It was show-offy, I think. I think that often happens with very personal novels where you just get going and it's beautiful and it, but it doesn't always serve the narrative very well. And that's okay. I ended up in a good place with a book, and I'm glad that the characters didn't completely self-destruct. And that's who read the book.
This is Ariel Blake. She's the narrator of the book.
Okay. And I have to, you know, I'm very sorry for what I just said, but I'm
That's
still
okay. No apologies. I didn't get that from it, and I was like, oh, and I just wanted to just confirm.
Thank you for setting me that. That was something I had.
Her name's Ariel Blake. Her name is Ariel Blake,
yeah.
and she's an actress also. She's narrated some other books. She's on IMDb, and I just looked it up to confirm.
So that was my main reaction, was that I would definitely read other things by this author. I think that this is she's really talented, and if she can successfully create as complicated characters as were in this book, especially Rebecca, that's really I think a talent worth following, because you know, hopefully she'll only get better at that.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I see we have a couple hands up. Lara Mimosa Montes. I love Mimosa as your middle name. Maybe it's your former last name. Whatever it is, I love it. Talk to us. Tell us about yourself. Ask a question. Make a comment. Go for it.
Hi, it's my first time joining this reading group, and
welcome.
This is so fun. I had heard about this novel and like delayed reading it because I often just think the hype is not something that I'm drawn to. Like, I'm usually not interested in novels for plot. I usually am interested in style. And so I just felt like it had become time where I was like, you know, the people who are talking about this novel, I trust them and I want to read it. And so I read like a month ago, and then I saw there was this group, and I was like, oh, I'd like to hear other people talk about it. So just to go back to this question of style, what I loved about it, yeah, the self-destructiveness, but really like the personality in the world and the way the world is constructed through all of these like proper nouns and references. I just felt like I didn't, in a way, have any doubts about the thoroughness with which this narrator protagonist was constructed. It was just so thorough, all the references. Like, sometimes when I'm reading something and I'm trying to sort of make like a shorthand, like an index of the world that this is, you know, like Donna Summer or Essex County, or Gen Z, like they're just all Union Square, like they're these very specific signifiers that, because I lived in New York, help like allow me to build that world as a reader. And I was listening to someone read from a new novel today, and it was very difficult for me to locate in their references and the excerpt that they read where they were in the world. It was like too vague, and I was like disappointed because I was like primed to want to like what that person was reading. But as I'm flipping through my copy of this, I'm again excited, like maybe that's part of the showing off, you know, how much specificity. And I imagine that took a great deal of revision of how can I elevate this and make it even more absurd, and not absurd in the sense of like, this is unreal, although there are many moments like that in the book, particularly at the convention, the Comic-Con, but unreal as in like, wow, these things exist together, and they could only have existed together because, if not in my life, like the author's life, then certainly in the fictional world that I know so well and have built with such integrity. So I had a lot of admiration for the specificity in that and the boldness, you know, in doing something so specific. I could imagine a different editor, a different time would have maybe asked a writer to like make different choices, like that's too specific, like that will alienate a reader. But whatever, they must have had the right editor and was just like, no, do that and do that even more so. And I think the extremes that they're going toward are part of what make the style of this as amazing and immersive as it is.
Thanks, Laura, and welcome. I'm glad you took a chance on us tonight. Hope you enjoyed the discussion and return. It's funny. She is very specific about place and really grounding in that sense. But for the first couple paragraphs, maybe even page or so before I got that it was the East Coast, there was a part of me that was so ingrained about Six Flags being in Gurnee, Illinois, that I was like, oh my gosh, this is in Chicago. This is great. This is exciting. Like, I know Chicago really well. And then I was like, this is not in Chicago. This is so not in Chicago. But when I hear Six Flags, I think Gurnee, Illinois. So I got excited, and that's what I went with at first. And then it was very clear how New York, how East Coast, she was. And then when I read more about her, obviously I got it. But yeah, she definitely knows her place and describes it well, and really sets the stage and the location in, if you're at all familiar with it, you totally feel it. But for me also it's definitely there's an age difference between the author and me, and I felt like she's showing a side of life that I never really experienced, because of I missed that. I moved past that part quickly, and it wasn't like that way for me. And it's interesting to read about it, to really get like an in-depth portrait of that. So, but thank you for raising your hand and talking tonight. Kevin's got his hand up for a while. Kevin, talk to us, buddy.
Hey, so I think I'd just like to echo what everyone else is saying. I love the style of it. I think she does a great job of making these really long, elaborate sentences that don't sort of trip over themselves. There's one especially that I loved at the start of chapter 4, the one that mentions the almighty paper bag. I think it was especially great. And yeah, I liked Edie as a character a lot. But I didn't really like the book. And I think it might be a me problem, that I'm just sort of sick of this genre of anxious New Yorker having lots of sex. I really hated Fleischman, and I really hated Leaving the World Behind. And it's I'm done with this particular bit of the US, I think, which is definitely more of a me problem, the book problem. I think if I read this again in 2 years, I'd probably like it more, but I wasn't a fan.
Kevin, to be clear, would you be okay with anxious people in the Midwest having lots of sex? Or is it
maybe so.
Because they're from New York that you're like, this is so out of my reach, I just can't. I'm all anxious here in the Midwest, and I'm not getting any. And all I got to read about is how all the anxious people score on the East Coast. Come on.
I don't want to know what a borough is.
Is that when you say it's a me problem? Are we getting to it a little bit?
It's just New York, I think. I don't want to know what a borough is or what a bodega is. I'm done with it. I watched Seinfeld for 10 years. I'm done.
Sure. No, it's true. And this is the thing, over 17 years of books at Books and Bars, there is certainly a high percentage of New York stories. It's where the publishing world, thrives and lives. So I would say a majority, at a certain point, just in the way that we can't read another World War II book for a while. It was there, I do have to sometimes look and be like, oh my gosh, another New York story, and kind of parcel those out. But like I said, I didn't necessarily know going into this one, and I didn't pick it because of that or anything. And so, like I said, initially I was like, is this Chicago? And then clearly not, but I get that. I can feel that. And actually, I spent some time in New York, and every time I go back, I'm glad I spent an earlier time in New York. That's not me anymore. I get it. The Midwest is great, but we read stuff from all over the place. But Kevin, if I find out any of these books coming up are New York books, I will give you a warning.
Okay.
And you can take a break, take a vacation that month. I will not expect to see you, and all apologies. I know Migrations is not a New York book, and I know The Guest List is not a New York book. Those are both actually neither of those are American books, so they're not North American books either. So you, I think, will be interested in those, and hopefully not sick of the locations in those books. But I get it. You know what? Hey, if anyone's listening, Kevin is an anxious guy in the Midwest, and he doesn't like New York. So maybe you're here in the Midwest also. Kevin Thompson, he's right here. You can direct message him in the chat. It's cool. I mean, I don't know what Kevin's deal is, what he's got going on. I just know that I like Kevin, and I want him to feel comfortable. And so hopefully I've made him feel slightly more comfortable in the last few seconds. Probably not. Kevin Madsen, speaking of uncomfortable, if there's anyone I know that's uncomfortable, it's this guy. Let's talk to Kevin.
All right, well, hi there. Yeah, I missed the last couple of months, but I'm glad to be back. Yeah, I think that Kevin Thompson and I actually, not only do we have the similar names, we have the same first name, and we probably have a lot in common just in general, but about feelings for sure about this book. I really appreciated the writing. First of all, I think that to give her just a ton of credit to be able to develop the characters and to put together interesting people. But to me, so together with that, not to say, but instead of say these characters were great, they were very interesting. And also to me, this just felt like reading about people's lives, and I was like, oh, I mean, I have friends like this that are going through some stuff like this, or I have friends that are doing it. It wasn't a compelling story in the way that it wasn't in some ways it wasn't dramatic enough for me, in a way that and then it to me, also the ending, it just kind of ended. I'm like, well, this is sort of how life works. Yeah, I mean, sometimes relationships end and sometimes these things happen, and sometimes, so I felt I didn't love it. I really liked the writing, I really liked the characters, but the way it was put together, it just didn't quite. I was like, so I could listen to my friend tell this story at the bar, sort of not with the same resonance and not with the same characters, but so I don't know. I didn't love it. I feel like a lot of you guys liked it. Like a lot of the people here liked it a lot, and it didn't quite hit me that way. But
that's okay, Kevin. But I think that the difference there is that you maybe don't have a friend quite like Edie that you would be sitting with at the bar. I mean, I could be wrong, but maybe you do, who would be telling quite this story. It's definitely a character over plot, as I said in the chat. I mean, this is not, like you said, if you're looking for, like we read The Chain, that's just a plot book, right? The characters, no good characters there. It's just a fun plot, right? It's just like you go from A, B to C, and something happens, and the characters are just kind of stereotypical. I think this one is, really getting into the mind of there's just 4 characters here, and really at its core, it starts out with like 2, and then it kind of morphs. I mean, Eric kind of drops away a little bit, and Rebecca and Edie's relationship becomes really a key, and then of course Edie and Akila's relationship. But then how does Edie's relationship with Akila affect her parents, Eric and Rebecca, and what is the dynamic here? And I think it's just an interesting scenario to put like 4 pretty well written and drawn characters into this situation that isn't something that I normally hear about. And I brought it up in the chat also. I mean, I was interested in the fact that I thought the relationship between Edie and Rebecca was growing to the point that maybe there was something more there, more than just friendship, or maybe something was going to happen between the 2 of them.
So,
and I mean, go ahead, Kevin.
Well, yeah, so related to that. So first of all, I don't know if you were like fishing for a shout out, because I know you weren't fishing for a shout out, to be very honest. I know that. But that speaks to the point of picking a broad range of books. Because I did not think of that. I didn't think about that tonight. I didn't think about it all. But to speak about a plot oriented book versus a character book, that was that's a good point that I did not think about related to the chain versus this book, because I would say, yeah, the chain, you know what I mean, the chain, yeah, the characters are these stock characters, they're involved in this, but you know what, it drives forward in a way that this book doesn't, and or didn't for me anyway. You know, this book kind of was like, we're kind of working our way through life, and that did make it interesting. So I don't want to say that I disliked the book, but I also just it wasn't like, yeah, this is a great
Sure.
read. This is something that
I hear you.
yeah.
Kevin, did you read Sally Rooney with us?
I don't think so.
Okay, because I'm a little bit reminded of just the type of book. If I were to put different books that we've read in the past, especially in the past year, just into different sort of buckets, I would put like Luster over with Sally Rooney. It just in its character, its dialogue. It's a situation, but it's not about like what's going to happen. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. It's not like that. And sometimes, I don't know what makes a better book club book or discussion. I think a mix of those, obviously. And it'll be interesting to see what others
That's
think.
a legit shout out to you. That is a good job. I mean, I've been coming a long time. Jeff, you pick great books.
No,
sure.
Kevin, I'm not looking. Thank you, Kevin. You're very kind. I'm not trying to like set you up to be like, and then remind everyone that I've been doing this for 17 years and a lot of people like it, and I picked the good books. No, because actually I went over the list of books recently, and I haven't loved them all either. So, but I have loved our discussions about them. And I can honestly say that. And even when I go into one being like, oh, I don't know if anyone's going to like this book, it's going to be tough, I usually go away going, wow, I have a new perspective on it, new appreciation for it. I'm glad I read it, glad I talked about it, especially. So thank you for taking the time and sharing it. And it's totally okay to disagree. And there's probably people here who agree with Kevin's opinion on it, and maybe we'll hear from them tonight. But I got Donna's hand and Kara's hand. So Donna, do you want to go before Kara, or do you want Kara to talk again before you go, Donna? I'm just saying, because the only reason you're here.
I think Kara,
Okay.
I think Kara's was up first, so I want to hear from her.
Okay, Kara, go for Donna. I'm gonna get something to drink. Go for Donna. No, I'm just kidding. Wait, you're not driving anymore. Look at how
I got home in the meantime. I was hoping I would be home to like make it at the at 7, but I was like 30 minutes late, so
she's like,
I'm here now.
Call on one of the Kevins. The anxious Kevins they'll draw it out. I can make it home and get my video on. It's going to be great.
Really, I wanted to chime in when I heard what Laura said. This was one of my also reasons I loved it, and I didn't get to it when I first spoke, because it's been a month since I've read it, but it was her references that really made me love the character and love the book so much. It did feel real and lived in. And I can't remember all of them, but I remember the very first reference she made that I was like, oh my God, thank you. And she referenced Helga Pataki from Hey Arnold. And I was like, an author from she's my peer. I am so into it. I was so pleased. And again, not to harp on the bad choices that Jeff makes. Just kidding. But in Hail Mary, one of my biggest gripes was how the character is supposed to be 30 years old. He's supposed to be a millennial, but his only references are the Beatles and the Three Stooges, So the references in this book were on point. They were so much better than I don't know. I just was oh, this is a real person that I could talk to. She has not all the same references as me. She's more into some Comic-Con stuff than I am, but I understood almost all of her references, and I was I don't know. I think that also really helped me relate to her and make it feel like a real person.
Excellent. And my point was I didn't get that reference. See, that was that's not, I don't know what that is. And
you gotta watch Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold is so good.
See, yeah. And so I totally missed that. But in the chat, we are also talking about Luster, the title, and the double or maybe more than 2 meanings of that. And I did pick up on that. I like the the painting reference to that. The author was a visual artist. She was also a painter before she got into writing, and I think she still considers herself to be a painter of sorts and a visual artist. But you know, she's gotten more acclaim and success from this novel. But I definitely got that from the title. Yeah, I'm glad the references spoke to you and got it. It's another way in which I felt like, okay, I'm reading, you know, someone who is younger than me and making references to stuff. I mean, I'm like the pop culture reference guy, but at a certain point, obviously, you know, I'm not keeping up with the new stuff. This is where I got to check in with the, you know, with the kids and see what they're reading and talking about. Donna, I hope now that you're feeling like this was worth it. I hope also, Donna, that there are people, obviously it's not me, I'm not that for you, but I hope there's a reason that you might still come to the in-person one at Local Roots. I could tell you, Andrew and Lisa are going to be there. I mean, I could give you a list of people I think are going to be there. I'm going to be there tomorrow. I'd love to see it, but maybe next month. I don't know. I mean, God, it would be great if you could get, you know, I mean, a lot of people want to see Kara in person, but I'm just saying, you know, in fact, just today on Slack, the O'Grady's, Pete was saying, oh, well, you know, how are we going to get Kara in person? And I was like, I mean, I'll just say it right now.
Right.
You know what? Pete O'Grady really wants to see you, Kara. So he likes to go to Local Roots. I'm just throwing it out there whenever
I'll
you're
see if I
comfortable.
can make an appearance tomorrow.
It's outside. It's outside. You know,
Okay.
if you're, you know, you can wear a mask if you want. All right, Donna. I'm sorry, Donna. It's your turn.
No, that's fine. And I really want to first say that I didn't mean to discount the Kevins and other people that are regulars. It's just that I think this is such a female-centric book. As somebody commented in the chat, that Eric really gets kind of short shrift in character development. It's really the women that are so much more interesting. So I just thought that Kara and Rebecca might have some insights, which they always do. So it's great to see them. But what I wanted to just quickly mention is about the style, is that in addition to all those great specific references people have already commented on that are from pop culture and locations, all of that great stuff, she really had me at page 24. There's a part, a long paragraph, where she recounts all the people at work that she has slept with. And even at the office, even most of them. And it's this whole litany, but it's pretty appalling. But the librarian in me, who is really interested in the publishing world, was just struck by all the details and the different positions she mentions, and I don't mean sexual positions, I mean work positions, that she talks about from her office, her publisher. And it starts out with onboarding with Mike, his little fingers in junior human resources lingo as I cajole him out of his pants. And then she goes on from there. She's got Jake from IT, and she's got Hamish from contracts. And she has Tyler, managing editor of Lifestyle and Self-Help, and who had the, you know, gators and all this kind of frou-frou. Jake from IT again. Then she's got Michelle from Legal. She's got Karen from Bodice Rippers. She has the person from Cancer Centric YA, and the Jason from STEM textbooks, who wants me to cry just like I did for Jerry. And, you know, I mean, it's this whole compendium of the publishing world. I just laughed out loud because it wasn't really about the publishing world. It was really about her and her sexual experiences. But boy, was that cleverly written. And there's more than one section like that, but I thought it was brilliant. So I just had to bring that to people's attention if they wanted an overview of jobs in the publishing world.
That's one way. Yeah. I mean, that section, that reading it now, I just got a real sense of, you know, it just doesn't seem like, I don't know. I mean, first of all, with most of us not being in an office for a while now, and then maybe, I don't know if that's what a return to office was like, but it just felt like with, I don't know, like with Me Too and with just things happening, like it doesn't seem, I don't know, like maybe in your workplace, that's still happening, or maybe that's just a New York publishing world thing. But I was like, wow, this is all at work. These are all people she works with. I don't know. It just doesn't. I don't know. Anyone else? I was like, I mean, no problem with the amount of people that she hooks up with, but just weird that she works with all of them. Like that was like, wow, okay. And then, I mean, she ends up, I mean, is that part of the reason why she loses her job ultimately? Do we think, or did they have a real other reason for that? And that, you know, it was more of an excuse. I don't know. Anyone else not struck by that or struck by that? It's just me. You guys all work at much cooler places, huh, Rebecca? Rebecca, talk to me.
Mm-hmm. She was a very self-destructive character, and it frustrated me because she was also a brilliant character. She knew all the things. She knew she could comment on everybody's, you know, whatever they knew. She had some reference to it. She was also a brilliant artist, and but didn't, you know, understand the, I don't know, let herself give herself credit for that. You know, the relentless negativity that she had about every choice she made while she was doing such really incredible things. It made it hard for me to root for her after a while. And I know that many people go through life with this, you know, itty bitty shitty committee always talking on their shoulder. I have one that has very loud voices at times, but I guess I got frustrated with the way there was. It was almost like throwing in our faces all the evidence for why she was really making poor choices. You know, that's how I read that list of all of the people that she slept with. Yes, we all had our moments. Well, I did anyway. But I deliberately tried to forget all the names and all the things. I didn't commit them to memory. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think she really desperately needs to learn to love all the many gifts that she's been given, and perhaps that's her, you know, the point of the story is that even people who are so blessed have really a hard time of it and can really harm other people in their immediate circle. But I also, I guess I wanted a little bit of plot too, whichever, both Kevins, because I wanted there to be a definitive, we go through all of this with her together so that we come to this point where we know that the journey has been worth it. And I'm not sure that that's accurate to life, but it is accurate to what I want out of a book.
Okay, and so by the end, Rebecca, you feel she hasn't changed that much or isn't quite in that place? You're not sure about, you know?
I think there's a breakthrough in her art. I think, you know, she ends with saying she finally sees herself in the art. And I think that is a breakthrough and is a very good, I think, place to end it. But I still think she's going to make a whole bunch of big mistakes because she still doesn't, I think she hasn't understood fully that everybody has these serious self-doubts and is unhappy. And it's almost as if she's unique in this. And anyway, and at a certain point you can, I don't know, maybe it's so hard to know with these interpersonal things, but you have to make a choice at some point. Is the world going to be really crappy all the time and the glass is always half empty? Or are we just going to acknowledge that things are not always going to be perfect and you just better get on with it?
All right, fair enough. I mean, in some ways, I think, you know, is she trying to be, is Raven Leilani trying to be more realistic in the sense of, you know, this one event, this one series of events, this relationship with this family isn't necessarily going to be, you know, it's not going to completely change her life. You know, it's just one step, you know, and now she's back to, you know, painting and she's getting back in touch with that. I mean, she ends up with a job in the end, right? She has her own place. again, or at least a new roommate. But you know, she's back living on her, you know, outside of that house. But you know, maybe in some ways it's you know, it's just like a small step and more realistic in that sense. You know, this is, you know, I think of a pretty realistic novel. I mean, Raven Leilani has talked about, you know, a lot of people assume, especially with first novels, that they can be really autobiographical. And she said, you know, there's certainly elements of her in the book, but it's not autobiographical. I mean, the painting aspect of it was something really near and dear to her, and getting back in touch with the art in this character doing her art was something that was really part of Raven Leilani's life also. But I don't know. Yeah, it's a small step. It's not like something, not like there's like a major inciting incident and then like this changes everything forever. I mean, there's a few things, but it's like a, you know, my mom would call it a little slice of life book. It's just, you know, it's just a moment in time, and you might look back on it and say, these are things that, you know, changed this person a bit or changed this character, but it might not be, you know, if we check back in with Edie in a year or so, you know, she's probably still making some of the same mistakes, right? I mean, she's, you know, no one's perfect, and it wasn't like, you know, maybe it was earth-shattering change. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? Anyone else on something we haven't covered yet? Any of the other characters? Any thoughts on maybe the relationship between Akilah and her adopted parents, and then how Akilah and how Edie fits into that all? Kevin, I see you. Talk to us.
Yeah, I guess
First, Kevin 1. Kevin Thompson. Mattson, you're next.
Okay.
I like the Kevins come together now.
Completely off topic, I guess, from what you just said, but I really liked the way that it happened, I think, like 2 or 3 times where there's a really tense moment, and then she kept that tension going by breaking to a flashback to her parents, which are little parts that I really like to keep that sort of that cliffhanger going for a really long time. And like, I think that could have ended really terribly, but I thought it really worked in this one, especially because I did like the sections about her parents a lot.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point in stylistically how she used those when she used those flashbacks, and how it broke things up and maybe added more tension and suspense to what was going to happen next. I like that. Kevin Mattson.
All right, yeah. Well, the only thing I was going to mention related to this, we haven't really touched on the financial component of her struggling and how that might fit into some of her decisions, or how that, you know, how that all fits together. You know, again, like I'm somewhat removed from my 20s, but I did live through my 20s, and so I remember some of the financial struggles and how people make those decisions, and we didn't really touch on that, and how that interplay actually fits together.
Well, what do you think, Kevin? What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, it sort of touches back to me in the way the book was. I didn't quite buy that she would I didn't quite buy that she'd move in there, that she wouldn't have other resources not necessarily financial resources, but even friends to hang out with, or somebody, you know, like, this is not, I just didn't quite buy that piece of the book. I get that it added a lot to the book, of course, because it adds relationships, and it adds the dynamic of their daughter in there. But it felt a little, I couldn't quite get there. But I do get financial struggles, and I know I've never lived in New York, but I can imagine how difficult it is to live in New York, especially as somebody who's either lost their job, or who's you know, clearly underpaid or underappreciated for a job. So yeah, I guess we just didn't touch on it. But
okay, so my thought on that, it is odd, and it does seem to happen quickly. I think I believed it was easier for me to see that Edie needed to move in with them because of how dire her situation was and how expensive rent can be, and when you lose a place, like how hard it is to get that next place without, a job and security deposit, all of that. So, but I guess what's weirder to me is what was Rebecca's game here? Why does Rebecca want Edie in this house? What, and why is she, it's Rebecca who's giving her the money, right? I mean, it's Rebecca who's giving, and those different amounts, weird amounts at weird times. And it's kind of like, sometimes it's a lot, sometimes it's not very much. And to me, I want to get, I had to think more about what is Rebecca's reasoning or game, or what's the plan here? And is it to find out, to really feel like her husband, that Eric can't hide anything from her, because if she knows the other person involved, like it keeps it somewhat safer? Or is it to help them with Akilah? And Akilah clearly needed, some other kind of connection that they couldn't give her, and was having a hard time with that tutor, and just in general. And was it hoping for something there? So I'm interested in any other thoughts on, to Kevin's point, or why does Rebecca want her there? But I see Lisa's got her hand up, and Lisa, it's okay if you have something else. I think you had your hand up already. So Lisa, talk to us.
Yeah, I did have something before, but it relates to what you said.
Great.
We haven't said out loud that she's Black, and Akilah's Black, and the parents are white, and Rebecca wants a role model for her daughter because she can't give that to her. And I thought the financial and the socioeconomic struggles were very realistic. I think being a lonely outsider, I think that's also had to do with why she was having so many office affairs. She's looking for love. She didn't get love as a child. She has to prove herself as a Black woman. I think as someone who is a minority, it's very clear to me that her position as an outsider, wanting and not wanting to be an insider at the same time, is a very strong theme in the book.
Thanks, Lisa. I see Lara's got her hand up again. Talk to us.
Oh, yeah, I think those moments in the suburbs, like at that party, and this feeling of always being suspicious to the neighbor. Like there's the subplot of the murdered dog. Yeah. And I thought that was going to go somewhere, but it doesn't really, but it's still part of I think, building this menacing present of like, oh, Black girls with their faces being shoved in the ground by cops at a pool party. Like that feeling is part of what illuminates that kind of like, I guess, it foregrounds the degraded sense of self that precedes also like being attracted to this white man who's married with money. In a way, like his shininess, his cultural status, his race status, like those things make him one-dimensional to her because she can't discern so early on all these other things about him, which make him seem actually like, oh, just somebody having a midlife crisis or whatever.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on that? Anyone who hasn't had a chance yet? Maybe bring up something that we haven't brought up yet. I see Donna's hand again. Donna, talk to us. Donna, are you still with us? Donna?
Yeah, sorry.
That's right.
I do think, again, talking about the end, and I appreciate what Laura said about how the racial piece is really an underlying theme through the entire book. I mean, there are many references to how she is struck by how she knows every time before she walks into a room that she has to kind of prepare herself for what might be in that room and how she might have to adjust how she looks or acts or talks, depending on what people in the room are going to think of her and so on. I mean, there's just a whole layer of self-reflection, self-criticism, just being on guard that she has the whole time. And the dog incident, of course, culminated in that horrible scene out in front of the house where she and Akila were essentially, harassed by those cops. And she was struck by how Akila, being raised by white parents, hadn't really been taught the talk. I mean, she hadn't really been trained for how to react in those situations, and it could have gotten really dangerous. But I think at the end, what I was really encouraged by was how I remembered how earlier Edie had said talked about how she described it as kind of a whole dilemma and contradiction she had faced in her whole life about how she was always looking for solitude because she wanted to do her art, her painting and other things. But she calls it my swift betrayal of this effort once in the spotlight of an interested man. And I think that kind of puts into context a lot of her issues with men and those, that whole long sequence of relationships, even in the workplace, that were so ill-advised. And then she had this interested man in Eric, and she wasn't going to paint. She was just going to go off and do this whole thing. But by the end, I thought she was much more comfortable with solitude. I mean, there were long stretches where she was able to paint. She was able to go off and do a little bit of, job hunting, but spend time in libraries or wherever. And by the very end, she really was working a lot on her painting. Now, the fact that she was able to do that in this white people's house in a suburb, rather than on her own in the city, is kind of a whole interesting thing in itself. But I think she was ready at the end. She was no longer interested in Eric. She wasn't really looking for a man anymore and to distract her. And I think she was going to be better off. Maybe still making some bad decisions, but better than she was at the beginning.
Excellent. Thank you, Donna. Rebecca.
I wanted to bring up when she wasn't sure who was giving her the money. It was either Eric paying her for sex, and they weren't really having very much sex, or Rebecca was paying her for helping to mother Akila or whatever it was. And then she went into all that insane cleaning. It really struck me when she was cleaning the furnace, area, things that are just like obviously mania. But I think that was her attempt to try to earn, if that makes any sense, or pay back, or, make it even, that she was receiving things. And so, and then now I'm going to go all the way back. And of course, this is a book about race. It's about a Black woman trying to navigate a very unfair and confusing world, and really contrasted heavily with the worlds of Rebecca's and Eric's, and what is it? What is her worth? How does she learn to, I don't know, value herself or herself? I'm getting very philosophical. That was from the very beginning, as how I saw it, is, a woman trying to tell her story in a world where she is not safe, secure, with any advocates for herself, and so she's doing a lot of very self-destructive things because she's pissed off, basically. But even despite all that, she has enough talent and enough, I don't know, she is able to save herself and get onto a safer space. And it's not necessarily due to any help by Eric or Rebecca. I mean, I don't think they're actively trying to hurt her. Akila, I think, is what she saw as, well, no one's got it easy. This girl's also going to have to find out how to navigate her world. And anyway, so the more that we're all talking about it and the more the perspectives, and Laura, I really, really like your voice in all this. I just want you to know that it's always fun when we get someone who cares about books in the same way and cares to talk. This is a good book. I'm glad that I read it, and I am thinking about it more now than I had. And I finished it like Kara almost a month ago. So I'm glad to be back in the world visiting it.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, I finished it a little ahead of when I normally do also, and it did take me some time to go back, but it was one that there are things that stuck with me, and it had been really good to go back and do the research and read interviews with the author and listen to her talk, and really delve back into it and appreciate it maybe on a level that I might not have just from my first reading of it. So again, appreciate you guys sharing all of your perspectives. It does really help. I see Kara has her hand again. Kara, talk to us.
Yeah, Lisa made a comment in the chat that I think would be interesting to talk about, like whether Raven Leilani was at all influenced by the murder of George Floyd. And I don't know exactly, maybe you have a better idea, Jeff, of like when she wrote it. I mean, like, or when it was published and came out. Mm-hmm. Obviously, like she could have been influenced by the murder of like a lot of Black people by police. So, right. It might have been a larger part of it, but
yeah, from what I understand of the timeline, it probably wasn't George Floyd, because the book was published in August of 2020, and she was writing it. She took a year to write it before it was then sent out. And I mean, there are edits that are made, there are things that are revised, but I don't think that she was heavily influenced by something like that. But again, sadly, there are many other events that similar to what happened to George Floyd, many other people that were murdered that may have influenced in some way. I mean, I couldn't help but read it as, yeah, it felt very timely. And I was afraid, I mean, that this was going to have more of a tragic end at some points too. Like, I didn't know where it was going to go. But I was frightened for her in those situations, and for Akila, which, is just, yeah.
I think there was like some influence just about like police and other state sanctioned violence. Like she was, I'm kind of looking for it and seeing if I can find it again. I read an interview with her where they do talk about George Floyd, like okay. The author asked her about it, and I wish I could remember what she said, but she kind of like she talked about like a lot of other like kinds of violence against Black people in society, and she mentioned that her like dad had died of COVID-19, and so like there were ways that like the state is violent towards Black people even outside of policing, and so I think that was like another element that influenced her writing. So, I mean, I think that like it shows itself in other ways in that novel too, like in the like living paycheck to paycheck and the way she's treated at her job, the way she's treated by people in the suburbs. Like there are so many other things that go into it that like make her situation threatening, even outside of like the more maybe viscerally threatening interactions with law enforcement that take place.
Yep, thank you. I posed the question in the chat, but I just want to see if anyone has any thoughts on what Raven Leilani ultimately was trying to say with this book, and what your takeaway was. Either of those, if anyone has anything, love to hear it. if you're thinking about it too, I just want to remind you all that if you're interested and available, we do meet in person at Local Roots, which is on 66th Street near Chicago in Richfield. And we sit outside on the patio, and you order inside, and then they bring your food and drinks out to you. Most of it's undercover, so if you're looking for some shade, but we have had a heat wave, so it does get warm out there sometimes. I think it's going to be a little cooler maybe tomorrow night, but we do the Zoom on Wednesday and then the in-person on Thursday, and you're welcome to come to either or, whatever works for you. We also have a bookshop. I've put the link out there a few times, but if you buy the books from bookshop.org/shop/books and bars, I can share the link again. I have a list of all the books we're currently doing and the ones coming up, and then a list of ideas for the next couple of years. I mean, I literally have enough ideas for 3 years of book club, but what'll happen is you guys will start getting interested in voting and telling me, do this one, please don't do this one, that sort of thing. And then, well, it'll help us narrow it down. But we have our schedule set through early October, and I don't know what's going to happen after that, when we'll have to move inside, when it won't be conducive to us being outside. But I'm thinking we might go back to Moon Palace if they're ready for us. And of course, Local Roots has even said if the weather's bad, we can always go inside there too. And we'll see if the Zoom keeps up also, how things go. But the way things are going, I mean, put the mask back on. Everyone, please be careful, and try to stay away from that Delta if you can. I'm hearing it's pretty bad. So I hope that we go back to a more regular in-person schedule, but who knows, maybe we'll just keep zooming, and maybe the in-person's going to go away again, sadly. I don't know, but I'll keep you guys in touch. So we're on booksandbars.com. Books and Bars is also on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I'm really easy to find, booksandbars@gmail.com. You can send me ideas, suggestions, questions, comments. Anyone else have anything? I see Kevin's hand is up. Kevin, talk to us.
Yeah, just a couple one quick thing to touch on what you just asked about, which is that I do think this novel, I mean, it does feel pretty timely. I mean, it feels pretty present, and I think that's good. I mean, I think that's the kind of things that do make something relatable, even if the story to me wasn't quite as driven or compelling as other ones. To be aware of how both fictional characters, we were touching in the chat, there was just a little bit of an angle to how this might have worked in a different way, spirituality or magical realism, or just how it might translate into a TV show or a movie. But I think that being timely, I mean, timely is important. This is where we're all living. We're not living 200 years ago. We're not living 200 years in the future. And I really like science fiction. I like other novels too. It's interesting to think about characters in that way. But I am glad that we read this, and I think it adds a lot of value to our lives in the present. And yeah, hopefully no COVID, Delta
yes.
free.
Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, Rebecca. She just sent the sketch note in the chat. It's awesome. I am just perusing it right now, but you can download it. I will post that on our socials also. Rebecca, if you don't know, always, when she can, does a really great sketch note of our discussions. And it serves as a recap of sorts. There's pull quotes and really fun references to things that if you're there, you definitely get all of them. And if you're not there when you read it, it makes you want to not miss our next event because of all the stuff in here. So many Rebeccas I see. Six Flags is only in Illinois, but yeah, I guess there's Six Flags elsewhere too. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you spending the time with us tonight. Great discussion. And I hope to see you either tomorrow night or next month. Next month is Migrations. And then we have The Guest List by Lucy Foley. So yep. And then, like I said, who knows what'll happen after early October, but check our bookshop to see a list of books that we're thinking about doing. And if you have new ideas or you want to vote on those, feel free. But I appreciate your tips, your time, and all of that. And have a great night. Talk to you soon.